to deliver his speech. With a big round of applause. With a big round of applause. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are here to celebrate one of our former luminaries from the Supreme Court. So I start with a verse of the Holy Quran. Verse 135. Or against your parents and kinsmen, or the rich or the poor, for Allah is more concerned with their well-being than you are. Do not then follow your own desires, lest you keep away from justice. And now for us. If you twist or turn away from the truth, know that Allah is well aware of all that you do. Justice Cornelius was an embodiment of justice. He was and in 1930 he joined the judiciary. In the judiciary, at a very young age, sometime it said that the dissolution of the assembly, constituent assembly, by the Governor General was illegal. That judgment today is hailed as an outstanding rendition of justice, for the reason that the majority decided that the Sindh High Court did not have the jurisdiction to decide the matter, and therefore there was no judgment of the Sindh High Court which could be assailed. It was an illegal judgment. The majority allowed technicality to avoid justice was avoided. Today, one man's voice is celebrated, although they include many distinguished jurists. The majority are not mentioned at all. This is the course of history, and this is the message to any judge who wants to stay on the right course, directed to us by none less than the Almighty through the Holy Quran. But that was not all about Justice Cornelius. He was a simple man. Today he lived very simply. He had no assets when he retired, and from his pension he paid the bills of this hotel. It was in this hotel where he lived, and I went and saw that room just now, a short while ago. He retired in May of declared that this political party should be abolished. There was one view projected by the government that that the fundamental rights did not protect the party, and that the opinion given was reasonable, it was fair, it could be seen, it could be determined, and therefore no interference should take place. Justice Cornelius held that this case does not concern the propriety of the auto only. This case concerns the fundamental right of freedom of association. And if the political right to associate has been defeated in this party's case, then that's a breach of the fundamental right. And no executive officer, no government authority can sit in judgment on the fundamental right. It is the court which does that. And the result was they lifted the ban. The Supreme Court was together on that. He was the Chief Justice at the time. They lifted the ban. I could say much more about him, but I want to move ahead. I want to move to a subject which may be of interest to you. And this is the subject of minority rights in Pakistan.
ये मेरा वो पानी का बोतल दे दो. Thank you, ji. I'm grateful.
Our Constitution, as Ms. Sabahat just told us, assures freedom to profess religion, to manage religious institutions, subject to public order and morality. Our Constitution, in Article 21, safeguards particular religions against taxation for the purposes, it safeguards against taxation for purposes of any particular religion. So for no particular reason can other religions be taxed. Article 20, no religious instruction or ceremony in educational institution other than one's own religion is to be given to the students. No citizen can be denied admission to educational institutions which receives aid from public revenues on the ground of race, religion, caste, place or birth. Basically, our Constitution says everyone is free to profess their religion. All citizens have equal rights. There is no discrimination amongst them. And yet, for years, our minorities have felt discriminated, have felt sidelined, marginalized. It is in these circumstances, in the year 2014, some 9 years ago, the Supreme Court, under the charge of Chief Justice Tasadduq Hussain Jilani, who sits with us right here, took up this challenge and came up with directions to protect the rights of the minorities. There were several directions that were issued. Directions about curriculum, directions to ensure that there is no hate speech on social media against minority religions, directions that a National Council for Minority Rights be established, a task force be established, and a special police force be established to protect religious places of worship. A job quota for minorities at 5% be ensured, and similarly an admission quota in educational institutions be ensured. For many years, these directives were carried out under the charge of Mr. Shuaib Sakhi, who sits right here. That was a one-man commission. He worked strenuously, selflessly, and achieved many objectives. I may agree with Sabahat, there's a lot more to be done. But pursuant to that judgment, there was movement and a great deal was done. Today, the minorities see that judgment as an umbrella which protects their rights. Today, the Supreme Court acts as a facilitator vis-à-vis the government authorities who have been cooperative. We must not overlook the fact, ladies and gentlemen, we have been through at least 3 decades of extremism. We have lost 80,000 citizens in this country to extremism. And by the grace of God, the situation is improving, and a lot of the complaints regarding violence which the minorities had, and even Muslims had, because of sectarian rivalries, they have diminished. I think that resilience which the Pakistani nation has shown through these turbulent times is a great credit to the people of Pakistan. And with great respect, also the state of Pakistan. Things are on the mend. A task force which was not in existence has come into being recently on 16th of November 2022 under the chairmanship of the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Religious Affairs and Interfaith Harmony. The members of the task force include almost all important executive functionaries in the country, which means that the issues relating to minorities protection and minorities rights would now be handled by persons who are directly related and who have authority over the persons that will carry out the instructions. I have hope and expectation that this task force will do well. Our association with Mr. Saddle continues because he is a court appointee. The court has a special implementation bench. 9 years have passed, but there is an implementation bench for this judgment. And today I will mention a few issues. I said file an application. You see, courts cannot pass executive orders. We cannot act on verbal statements or complaints. These matters come to us through petitions or applications. Notice is issued to the concerned parties, and the respondents come forward, and an order is passed after hearing the parties. But these are public interest proceedings. There is nothing adversarial about that. And I may assure you, for quite some time I was the chairman of the implementation bench. Now it is headed by someone else. And we always found cooperation from the government of Pakistan, as well as the provincial governments. So, nothing to despair about. Be positive, and inshallah, we'll progress further in this direction. You see, the protection of minority rights, the protection of rights of different sects within the fold of Islam, all this has to do with awareness and knowledge. You will be pleased to know that the Islamic faith does not appreciate sectarianism. There are several verses of the Quran that talk about it. And it is said that leave these differences to God. Don't fight amongst yourselves. What you have to do is Amar bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. Amar bil Maruf is do good deeds. Nahi anil Munkar is others who do bad deeds, just inform them and tell them, don't do this. You don't have to become violent. You don't have to become aggressive, but you should stop that. You should advise that. In relation to religion, the Surah Baqarah in Ayat 256 says, there is no compulsion about religion. There is no compulsion in faith. This is your own will, your own wish. In Surah Maida, which is number 5, Surah 5, Ayat 32, it is said, whoever kills one person unjustly is as though he has killed all of mankind. And whoever saves one life, it is as though he has saved all mankind. Mankind, whatever the form, whatever the color, whatever the creed, whatever the faith, is indistinguishable. There is no discrimination. That is how the Almighty considers human beings. In Surah Al-An'am 6, Surah 6, 108, the Almighty says, do not denigrate the deities of other faiths, lest in their ignorance, they disrespect Allah. Thus, Allah has made pleasing to every community their deeds. Let them do their deeds, their religious deeds. In Surah Hajj 22, Ayat 40, he says, due to the intervention of Allah to protect the places of worship of other faiths, the people who were confronting and fighting with each other did not destroy those places of worship. God intervened to prevent the destruction of places of worship. This is how important they are. This is how important the right of worship is. And so on. There's more, but I will not spend more time on that. What I would now turn to is the judiciary. Is the institution to which Justice Cornelius belongs or belonged, the heritage that he has left behind, the lessons that we can learn from him. We have a duty, ladies and gentlemen, under the Constitution and pursuant to our oath, to preserve, to protect, and to defend the Constitution. This is our bounden duty. The highest law in the country, and this duty we perform with utmost commitment and sincerity. The force of judgments that we give must be in accordance with the Constitution and the law. And when that is the case, our judgments have a moral authority. Just like the words of the Bible have moral authority, just like the words of the Holy Quran have moral authority. Moral authority comes from something which is good, something which is pure. Our judgments have the force of moral authority when they are given in accordance with the Constitution and the law of Pakistan. When do judgments have moral authority? Ladies and gentlemen, they have moral authority when they are passed on the merits of the case. Otherwise, in Tamizuddin's case, 1955, dissolution of the Constituent Assembly, the majority said Sindh High Court didn't have jurisdiction, so they couldn't go to the merits of the case. Justice Cornelius said no. The Constituent Assembly is an organ higher than the Governor General's wishes and discretion to give assent. It was said that the Sindh High Court doesn't have jurisdiction because the law under which they are doing this did not have the assent of the Governor General. And by doing so, by declaring that assent was not necessary, the learned single judge, the dissenting judge, Mr. Justice Cornelius, held that the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly was illegal and unconstitutional. That judgment survives today as an example because it was on the merits of the case. Whenever we resort to technicality, our focus is shifted elsewhere. I'm not talking about Pakistan. I'm talking about all over the world. All over the world, one comes up with objections that such and such judgment is weak because it does not deal with the real issue. And when it comes to constitutional enforcement, we must not blink our eyes. If it says 90 days for holding elections, it is our duty to say that. It is not our choice. It is not our choice. It is our duty to say that, instead of finding a reason why we should avoid to say that. This is what has happened. You call it controversy. I'm sorry, I'm not worthy of controversy. I'm a very humble person. You say you support us, please don't say that. You stand up for the Constitution and the law, then you must support the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And not any individual. We have no existence individually. Our existence is as a unit, as a constitutional organ, and that is how we function. It speaks on merit. Its judgment has moral authority. That becomes even more important when those judgments are not appealed or no review is filed. Then that means no one has any objection to the judgment. If a review is filed, then it will be heard, because no judgment is binding unless it becomes final. But if a judgment is not challenged, then it becomes final. So let's see what happens now. Let's see what happens now. And I'm optimistic that the people of Pakistan, the leaders of Pakistan, the institutions of Pakistan are all committed to the Constitution. Do you know that in this context, the leaders of Pakistan, the political leadership of Pakistan agreed to start negotiations, which have not ended yet. This is what we were informed. We have nothing to do with that. But at least they are conscious that they have a duty to comply the Constitution. And we are there to is there. It has a force of its own. It may not be implemented today, but it will last to the test of time and shall be implemented. Now, except to thank our hosts, Mr. Samuel Pyare, where is he? Mr. Samuel Pyare, the Honorable Bishop, the pastors and the bishops, and I don't remember exactly what your offices are, but it's a matter of privilege to be here. I haven't told you that one of the most respected citizen of Pakistan, for whom thousands of people have love and affection, is sitting here amongst us. He is devoted to education because he feels, and rightly so, that education is the source of progress for the individual and for his community and for society as a whole, because he comes back and shares his education. Who has given away money, time, effort, love, support, everything to the best institutions, academic institutions in the country, which started as a business school but today offers engineering, law. Tomorrow it will be medicine, I'm sure. I'm not sure if there's a medical school yet or no. Not yet. And I'm talking about Sayyid Babar Ali. Let's give him a... It's delightful to meet wonderful people. As Sayyid Babar Ali had a role in my life also. So thank you, sir. My other great benefactor sits here, Justice Tassadduk Hussain Jilani, totally committed to the law, so gentle and so refined, such a good example of judicial character, conduct, bearing and delivery. I salute him also, because one of the great advantages in life or blessings of life is when you have heroes to look after. So I am very lucky in that respect. Within my profession,